everyone. I am Dana Solomon, a reporter at Reuters in Mexico City, and it's a pleasure to be here with Paula Santilli, the CEO of PepsiCo LatAm. Thank you so much for your time, and hope we'll have a good discussion. I'd love to start off by hearing from you about how PepsiCo operates in Latin America and how important these markets are for the company overall.
Sure, Diana, and thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be able to tell you what we do in LATAM, because it is really a lot of stuff that we do here. We've been established in Latin America for over 100 years. Now we have presence in 34 different markets, and these are both a combination of emerging and developing markets. Now we have markets that are very well developed, for example, Mexico, and others that are still underdeveloped, for example, Ecuador. No? And we have around 13 bottlers with which we produce, make and deliver our beverage portfolio. We also have around 138 facilities for the foods business, which is our snack brands, our Quaker brands, and some other local brands such as Gamesa in Mexico, confectionery also in Mexico, and other businesses around Brazil, etc. So we have, 138 sites. These are either manufacturing sites or warehouses, and we run over 24,000 direct routes. So it's typical that you go any city in LATAM, up on the end of the mountain, very far away in poblados, very small cities, etc. We are there, arriving directly, servicing these businesses, these stores, whether they're large supermarket stores or tiny little changarros, almacenes, tenderos, So we have a unique footprint in Latin America. And what makes it, to me today, even more impactful is what a beautiful role we have in promoting regional growth, So we do have a social and economic impact of doing business in all these little towns, whether it's on our agro footprint or it's reaching little trade in very far away cities or towns. Our impact is incredible. Now there's Oxford Economics. This is, not us saying this, but somebody, an external source called Oxford Economics, who estimated our impact in GDP of around 0.5. And I'm sure it's that because I see it, when I go to the farmlands, whether it's in Argentina or in Mexico or in Brazil, when I see what, the efforts we're doing in sustainability, et cetera, how we're changing things in the markets and how our value chain is so impactful, how much business we do with different suppliers around LATAM, and our reach to our stores, finally to our consumer, is really massive. So I think we have a really beautiful growth impact, and we have a very important responsibility also today in making a more sustainable food system, from end to end. That's what we want to build, a really good sustainable food system.
And talking about impact, can you tell us a bit what the company's goals for climate and the environment are in the region? And maybe any particular challenges that you might face in Latin America compared with other markets in the globe?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and we're very, very enthusiastic about our climate goals in general, and many of our goals that will make at the end, Diana, the planet a much better place. So we recently launched something which we call PepsiCo Positive. Okay, and what is this? This is moving into an end-to-end transformation strategy that has sustainability at the center, okay? And it is, of course, about creating growth and value, but operating within very specific planetary boundaries and inspiring positive change in everything we do, from whether it's the environment to the consumer. So PepsiCo Positive, as we call it, drives action around three main pillars. Number one, it's positive agriculture. Tons to do here in Latin America, tons to do. So what we're doing here is spreading regenerative practices, agro practices, to make sure, okay, we need the earth to grow agro products, right? We need sugar, we need corn, we need potatoes, we need wheat, etc. But there's a way of doing agriculture in a way that regenerates the soil, regenerates the insect ecosystem, regenerates water, etc. So what we're doing today around the world, but specifically in LATAM, and I was not so long ago in visiting a farm in Argentina, I was so impressed, no? Is making sure our agro footprint is 100% regenerative. Okay, so everything we do, it's making sure that the ecosystem is regenerated. No, then comes, okay, now we have all these agro products. Now what do we do with them? We are standing on the second pillar of our strategy, PepsiCo Positive, which is positive value chain. Okay, so we have trucks and we have manufacturing facilities and we use water and energy, etc., to make a lot of products for today's consumer. And what we're doing is making sure that we are maintaining a circular and inclusive value chain. And then finally, the third pillar is about making sure we are all making, as consumer, positive choices, no? And positive behaviors, like, for example, you need to return the PET bottle back to us in some sort of fashion, because we will do something with that bottle and it has a value and it will be very helpful, no? So we need to work together with consumers to make sure they too understand their impact of their consumption and how important it is to make these positive choices, no? So for each of these three strategic pillars, Diana, we have targets, okay? And the target with a date, okay, which says by 2030, you're gonna have to reach this target. For example, let me tell you one. By 2030, we want to be net water positive, okay? Which means that we will be giving back to the planet more water than what we consume, okay? But by 2030 is like around the corner for a company of this size. And we are working on using the best technology, using the best science, using the best teamwork that we can to make sure we achieve this particular net water positive by 2030. Another one, which I like very much, it has a due date of 2040, okay? And which is, we want net zero emissions, okay? Which means that by 2040, we will not create carbon emissions, okay? We will not, if you have a little cloud on top of your head in Mexico City, where you and I live, it's not gonna be because of PepsiCo, because our footprint will be net zero in carbon emissions, no? So I can go on and on telling you a lot of these beautiful targets, but these are, some of the things that make us so aware of the climate change, so focused on making a difference, so focused on investing the right capex in the right things to be able to achieve, for example, this net zero emissions, and investing in science, technology. It's a really interesting journey.
One thing I want to follow up on is the agriculture program. Is it hard to work with suppliers and help them change their systems? What does that involve?
You know what it is? It's a contact sport, So we have beautiful suppliers of many, many years Sometimes we go back into generations working, for example, with potato suppliers for generations. Now we worked with grandfather, with father, now we are working with sons. And what it is partnership, really good partnership in making sure we work together on the right investments on farmland and the right practices, leading edge practices that make sure that we are saving money in terms of, or that we're saving water, that we're saving fertilizers and pesticides at its bare minimum, that we're using, for example, drones in a very incredible manner to make sure that we are only watering parts of the fields that need water, but you don't need to water everything. No? So what happens, let me tell you fun stories. No? So fields, they're not completely flat like a floor. They have movement, right? So water will follow gravity, and there are lower parts of the field where water will naturally sort of drip towards these lower areas, right? So you don't always need to water every single hectare. You only need to water the hectares higher up on the fields that are, more exposed to sun, etc., and have dehydrated. No, and today we are flying drones with our agro partners on every single hectare. The drone brings back satellite images that are near perfect, okay, and tell us you need to water here, but don't water here, or water here with more water than you need to water here. Huge savings in water per hectare. No, we're doing with the same drone, we're doing facial recognition of the insects, okay? So drones can do the facial recognition of pests, and what happens? We are able to detect where we have a infestation of X pest and only use pesticides in the bare minimum where it is needed, but not in the entire field, okay? Things like that are completely changing the way we think about soil, the way we think about ecosystems, whether it's birds, insects, etc., the water usage, and also the way we think about people on the fields. No, so we are working very strongly with our partners to improve the livelihood of over 250,000 people in our full agricultural supply chain, making sure there's shade to work with, that there are bathrooms on the fields, that there are, of course, no children on the fields, that there is, the right amount of hours and rest, et cetera, to make sure that these individuals, which we need on farmland, really have really good livelihood opportunities. No?
Mm-hmm. And the other question I wanted to come back to is the target for net zero emissions in 2040. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the biggest strategy to accomplishing that? For example, is there a fleet of electric vehicles? How does that look?
Yeah, it's all of the above. Net zero emissions is number one, looking very carefully at the scorecard of how much carbon we produce. And now we have better information at how much carbon we are producing. Okay, with that information, okay, we can do something about this, these decisions that create that carbon, right? So how do we mitigate? For example, our truck fleet is one of the things that creates carbon emissions naturally. And what we're doing here is, buying trucks that are net zero emissions. No, these are electric fleets. These are trucks that we are testing, completely testing. They are 60% to 100% more expensive, by the way, than a normal truck that runs on fuel oils. But we do them to be able to test their, longevity, their, their road usage. These trucks, they don't make noises, no? So people have to drive them with a lot more care, and we're training drivers to be able to train them to drive electric trucks, no? We're understanding batteries, which is a big thing, and where do we use these trucks and where they don't still work, etc. So we're investing in technology, in better trucks, fleet. We're also doing a lot of intelligence, software-based intelligence that create routes for us that create the less amount of traffic, no? If we have a truck stuck in a traffic jam, that truck is burning fuel, not going anywhere. That's not nice for the environment. So we need to make our routes in any city of LATAM very efficient for less fuel emissions, for example, and that requires very sophisticated software in use right now. But also it requires that the truck driver follows the instructions. No, it's no. This is not, you can drive around and go say hi to your cousin and stop in a taqueria. No, you're gonna have to follow the route, because that's what guarantees that we are minimizing today the fuel emissions that we create. No, so that agenda to get the logistic teams, the science teams based on software, and what I'm really proud of is that by 2021 we achieved a total of 100% of the electricity consumed in the entire Latin America coming from renewable sources. No, this is wind or solar energy. No, so we have entire warehouses that on the roofs have solar panels, and we're producing solar energy for the entire warehouse, which is large surface of warehouse. There's lightning, machinery that move, pallets, etc., truck loading systems, etc., and the whole thing runs on solar energy. So we're really, really proud of this particular achievement.
Mm-hmm. That's it's a good overview to see how all these pieces work together, and I think also underscores why a target might be as far out as 2040 to be able to keep developing all those variables. And I would be remiss not to ask about this bill in Mexico that would prioritize the state electricity utility, the CFAA, which has concerned a lot of people that this could limit investment in renewables and make it harder for companies such as yours to meet these very ambitious targets. What do you make of that?
Listen, we're definitely keeping our eye on the public discussions on this matter. However, you have to know that our efforts are going to be focused on continuing to move the journey forward and achieve these targets of zero emissions by 2040. And to build a more sustainable Mexico, a more sustainable city for the world. So whatever happens, we will continue on our focus, because it's the right thing to do. It's definitely the right thing to do. And we're completely committed to reducing emissions and greenhouse gases. And we're subscribed to all these international conventions, by the way, the Paris agreements, we as a company, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, etc. And that's why this is what I'm telling you today in Mexico, and whether it's wind farms, whether it's solar energy, whether it's IREC certificates, we are all about renewable energies right now.
Is PepsiCo involved in any lobbying around the electricity reform, either independently or through an association?
Listen, we, as I said, we follow the discussions on the matter. And we work actively in many different chambers in Mexico, con Mexico, La Cámara de Empresas Globales, etc. So we work within these chambers to help authorities in Mexico and around the world to make the best possible decisions for these important objectives.
Mhm. And with all the investment that this requires to get more of these projects underway, will there be costs passed on to consumers?
No, not precisely. We do this with the understanding that it's the right thing to do, and it's about completely transforming our value chain. No, it's about completely transforming not only agro but also value chain. No, so and this is why we invest in new technology, and this is something we've done always. No, so it's not directly related to the consumer prices. No.
Mhm. Okay. And is there anything special that PepsiCo has had to do in Latin America to deal with kind of supply chain issues that have been so difficult lately?
Yeah, of course, you know, we're in this part of the world, and we have lived some of these inconveniences out of coming out of the pandemia, no? But the reality is we have a really sustainable and really resilient supply chain, since most of our raw materials are made locally. No, whether it's agro products or packaging material or other costs involved. These are all, generally speaking, local. And when I say local, it's local for Argentina, local for Brazil, local for Peru, etc. Only a very small part of the products we make need imports. So the supply chain disruption has not been, in our case, that impacted.
Mhm. And are there any other kind of effects at this point in the pandemic that the company is dealing with as obstacles?
We had a lot of impacts, and it started by making sure our employees were safe. So that was the number one thing that we all lived during the beginning of the pandemic on these last 2 years, making absolutely sure that our employees were safe, and we were managing the right protocols to make sure they had their personal safety was taken care of. No? Then we looked at the value chain, and we did a lot of work for the small little customers. So big organized trade retailers, they have the capabilities. But if you are a very small changarro or a very small tiendita, you don't have that capability. So we did work individually and collectively with other companies to make sure these small tienditas were also safe and supported, etc. No? And then during the last years, we have invested across LATAM over $6 million, I have to tell you, to make sure that especially children that could suffer food insecurity were taken good care of with millions of meals. So when schools got disconnected in LATAM, children lost that sort of meal they were getting inside the schools, la merienda, la comida, etc. And we stepped in. So we provided over 10 million meals directly to the families to make sure that nobody should go hungry ever because they're not being able to go to school, for example.
Mm-hmm. And how many employees does PepsiCo have in Latin America?
Oh, we have over 70,000 direct jobs, and we create millions of indirect jobs within the whole value chain. Mm-hmm. So we have a really impactful footprint, as I mentioned. We are about 0.5% of GDP of any of these countries, and we're really proud of it. It's also a huge responsibility.
Mhm. Is that number of employees growing as the company grows? And
It is growing. It is growing, and we're also a very good employer. You know, so we take really good care of our employees, as I described. But today, what I think is interesting, that's something very strong that we're doing, is reskilling. You know, so there's so much change and transformation inside any of our operations because of technology, whether it's managing robots, whether it's managing sophisticated software, whether it's managing, you know, sort of phone connections with the company, whether you're outside in the south of Mexico or the north of Guatemala, that a lot of what we are doing right now is completing education of our employees. No? So we are actually reskilling 70,000 direct employees, including myself, which I need to be reskilled as well. No? So that we have very high awareness that the world is changing and LATAM cannot stand behind. So we have this employer responsibility of making sure the skills of our workforce are updated as much as we can.
Mm-hmm. Paula, thank you so much for taking the time today and giving us some insight into what's happening inside the company, and will be definitely something to track as the company tries to move forward with meeting these targets. So let's stay in touch.
Sure, let's stay in touch, and thank you for your interest. It was nice talking to you. Bye.
Thanks.